In college football, in the chaotic scenario we all find ourselves in, with the transfer portal, with NIL, with conference realignment, with a 12-team playoff that it feels like college football fans are having a civil war over, we have something beautiful. We have a sense of normalcy. We have a return of greatness. We have a blast from the past in the Rose Bowl. And not just any Rose Bowl. It's a Rose Bowl that is on New Year's Day at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. local time in the Pacific time zone, and it's featuring a team from the Pacific time zone. That's right. These two teams have faced off against each other before in a Big Ten versus Pac-12 setting. I am talking about the Ohio State Buckeyes playing the Oregon Ducks in the Rose Bowl in the third College Football Playoff Quarterfinal. And it just so happened to be that these two teams are facing off in the Rose Bowl because Oregon earned the 1 seed. Their preferential pick was the Rose Bowl. They wanted a bye and the Rose Bowl because it was the closest venue to them. And then Ohio State got here by being the 8 seed and crushing the 9 seed Tennessee and Columbus to march on for a chance to face off against Oregon for round 2 and win the rematch. So I'm pumped for this game. You should be pumped for this game. If you're not, then, I guess that's okay. That's your preference, but I kind of think you're a little bit insane if you're not pumped for this game. So I'm going to be talking about this in several more videos. We're going to be producing a lot of content on here about this game on College Football with Sam because there's a lot of matchups to discuss. There are multiple angles. There's talk about how this is the true national championship game, which I think is a little bit premature, but I can buy it. I'll give you a hint. My power ratings have these two teams as the top 2 teams in the nation, with Penn State, Texas, and Notre Dame trailing very close behind these two teams, but still Oregon and Ohio State are the top 2 in my power ratings. So I'm excited for this. And before I give you my preview, analysis, and prediction, I just ask for a few things that you can do for me that will help you out as well. Please like the video, share it around other college football fans that we can grow our audience here, subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that you get notified when more Rose Bowl content comes out on my show on College Football with Sam, and also so that you can get notified when we go live for this game and all other quarterfinal games and college football playoff games where we do commentary, play-by-play, analysis in the commercials, and also we interact with our viewers and commenters in the live chat during commercial breaks. And also so that when we release our deep dive on this game, which is a deeper, longer preview, more of what my channel is known for, and I want to keep that around. So we'll be doing that. It'll be looking at different matchups, more matchups than we're talking about today, more information, maybe even a revision of my prediction. And also when I react to this game, you'll want to see all of that stuff. I'm telling you. So hit the notification bell to get notified when those things drop. And also comment your prediction for this game down below. If you want to support the channel, donate to me to support the work that I do here. You can sign up as a paid member of the Patreon page or purchase merchandise via the link in the description or pinned comment that shows you my merchandise store. And also the Patreon page link can be found there, or you can just send a super chat in the comment section. But regardless, I appreciate you just doing the free things, and I appreciate you being here and watching the video. So Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And this game takes place on New Year's Day, and it's sacred. The Rose Bowl and a matchup like this, the fact that we get to have it twice, an Oregon-Ohio State rematch, I think is sacred. A lot of people hate rematches. They hate that that's a part of super conferences and the 12-team college football playoff. I love them. I love the concept. I'm a Michigan fan. Many of you know this, but if you're new to the channel, you probably don't. I'm saying that for the context of if Michigan and Ohio State played each other 3 times in the same season, one at the end of the year, one in the Big Ten championship game, and one for the national championship, I would find that to be the best thing in the world. Or not, that's obviously hyperbole, but very close to the best thing in the world, behind things that are far more important in life, but very close, because I'm a huge college football fan. I'm a huge Michigan fan. But from an objective point of view, I don't understand why that's such a bad thing for these great games, whether rivalry games like the game or for a great matchup like this. And honestly, now a Big Ten Conference rivalry, two coaches who were at the best programs in the Big Ten facing off. I think that's awesome. But anyway, the key matchups here are twofold. Number one, matchup A, is Oregon's passing attack, their quarterback, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, against Ohio State's defensive line, linebacker room, and defensive back room. Ohio State's pass rush and pass defense against Oregon's pass protection unit and pass offense. This matchup killed Ohio State Knotson. Killed them. It was the reason why Oregon won, because they just went over the top on Egbuka or on, more accurately, Denzel Burke, and they didn't have safety help, or the safeties couldn't get there in time because Oregon was spreading out that defense, and they worked Ohio State's defense, and eventually it actually opened up the ground game for Oregon as well. Dillon Gabriel, he is an elite passer, and he is a great college QB. Jordan James is an incredible running back. The receivers, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Trayshawn Holden, are fantastic. Kenyon Sadiq and Terrence Ferguson are Oregon's tight ends there, and their O-line, Josh Connerly and Johnny Cornelius especially, elite tackle duo, but also Iapani Lololu, Nishad Strother, and Marcus Harper II provide a good interior O-line. Ohio State's D-line has struggled getting pressure for much of this year with 4, but Jack Sawyer's been getting better as the year goes on. Tyleik Williams, Ty Hamilton are still weapons on the interior, and Tui Molau is a career high in sacks right now with 8. Cody Simon is an elite linebacker. Sonny Styles is coming along there. The safety room with Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, and Jordan Hancock is the nation's best. And at corner, Denzel Burke and Davison Egbuka have had their issues, but they're still good corners overall. Matchup B is Oregon's defensive line, linebacker core, their safeties. It's really what it is their rushing defense against Ohio State's rushing offense. I say this because what didn't help Ohio State in the first matchup between these teams is that after Simmons went down, they could not run the football. They could, maybe for a few yards here and there, but Oregon was beating them on the lines of scrimmage. They were straight up beating them, both their D-line and OSU's O-line, and as the game progressed, obviously from the get-go, this was the truth in pass protection, but as the game progressed, they began to work Ohio State's defense and defensive line in terms of run blocking as well. Here, I think that Ohio State can win in a shootout. I think that Oregon can torture their defense and Ohio State can still win, unlike last time. That's if certain things happen, though. I think if certain formations or certain concepts or certain plays are called in the ground game in combination with the fact that Oregon's rushing defense has been a little bit suspect. It's not Penn State's rushing defense. It's not Indiana's rushing defense. Out of the top 4 Big Ten teams, Oregon has the worst run defense. Now, I don't think it's bad, but it has some vulnerabilities. So how can Ohio State maybe exploit those or keep Oregon honest on defense by running the football? That's matchup B right there. Oregon's rushing defense and really their trench play on defense against Ohio State's offensive trench play and their rushing attack, which also includes quarterback Will Howard. So how I see it here is you got Will Howard at quarterback, TreVeyon, Henderson, Quinshon, Judkins at running back. Center is Carson Hinsman. Guards, Shabola and Saraveld. Luke Montgomery, I think, has been rotating in. Tackle is Fryer and Donovan Jackson, who shifted out from guard. Their O-line in Ohio State's has regressed since their game against Oregon. Oregon's D-line, in theory, has gotten healthier. Statistically, I don't know if it's better. It, in fact, in rushing defense, probably regressed. But in Pro Football Focus, every Oregon player on defense is rated very highly. And you're talking about Derek Harmon, Jamari Caldwell, Mateo Uyunglele, Jordan Birch, a lethal front 4. You have Jeffrey Bassa and also Bryce Betcher, former walk-on at linebacker. We're not going to have stories like that in college football anymore. I hate that the walk-on position is eliminated. And then at secondary, you have Brandon Johnson, Jabbar Muhammad, Tysheem Johnson, Nico Reed, and also Kobe Savage. So, on paper, games aren't played on paper, but on paper, Oregon should do better in this matchup, even more so than they did last time. And last time, they were better in the trenches. But is that the case here? Because the games aren't played on paper, and Ohio State did pretty well in the trenches, especially on defense, but also on the offensive line to a certain degree against Tennessee. And their pass protection did very well against Oregon the first time around. And I have confidence that can do well the second time around as well, because they allowed no sacks to Tennessee. They didn't allow a sack to Michigan, although they allowed pressure. But Michigan is the best D-line in the nation. And you can't really blitz against Ohio State without paying for it because of that wide receiver core. So Ohio State has a lot of insurance that covers up their weaknesses on the offensive line. You'll notice here that there's no area that I have Ohio State being definitively better than Oregon in. And if you want to disagree with me, sure, but I think that right now Jordan James and Noah Whittington are pretty close to TreVeyon, Henderson, Quinshon, Judkins. I would take, it depends on the circumstance. Henderson's ceiling is unlike any of these running backs, but Jordan James is a lot more oomph to him, and he's had the more productive season. Judkins has really struggled in Big Ten play, and I mean really struggled. We've talked about this before in about, ever since that Oregon game, in well over 2/3 of his games he's rushed for under 4 yards per carry. After the O-line injuries and after the Oregon game, he's essentially been a power back at Ohio State and not much else. And part of it is due to, I think, his style of play, the offensive line. It's a mixed bag of sorts. If I had to choose, I would probably, especially after the Tennessee game and seeing Henderson again, I would probably lean OSU, but not definitively there. At wide receiver, I truly don't know who I would pick. I know that, again, against Tennessee, Ohio State did very well, but we have to remember, Tez Johnson lit up Penn State's secondary. Same with Evan Stewart and Traeshon Holden, in a way that we did not see Ohio State light up Penn State's secondary. So, using comparative analysis, these receiver rooms are pretty equal. Very much are. I would probably lean slightly OSU at receiver as well. I will tell you, though, my model actually grades out Oregon's receiver room as the best in the nation. So a little bit of a disagreement with my model there. At guard, I would favor Oregon at guard if I had to make a choice, but Oregon's guards have been a bit underwhelming. Ohio State's have as well, of course. That's something they have in common. I would lean toward Oregon there if I had to make a choice. At quarterback, tight end, center, and tackle, I would pick Oregon. Gabriel's had a better year objectively than Will Howard has. Tight end, it's not even a question. Center right now is not even a question. If McLaughlin was healthy, center would be Ohio State. And if Simmons was healthy, I think tackle would be a conversation. But I would still lean Oregon there with a Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly Jr. These offenses overall are some of the nation's best, especially when they are on. They're both top 10 in scoring. Ohio State averages 36 points per game. Oregon averages 36.9. Ohio State averages 0.568 points per play. Oregon averages 0.546 points per play. And in terms of yards per play, Oregon averages 6.6, which is fifth. Ohio State averages 6.7, which is fourth. These, in my mind, when they're on, are top 5 offenses. I think Oregon's has a higher ceiling, and I also think they have a higher floor. I think their offense overall is better than Ohio State's. In recent memory, it's been way better because Ohio State's offense has regressed with the injuries on the O-line. That game against Tennessee, for example, that's their best game right there. That's their best offensive game, and it was an elite game by the offense overall. But keep in mind, they got shut out for the second quarter right there, in part because Tennessee had some long drives, in part because there was a questionable interception, which maybe should have been an incomplete pass, and also because, like, that 3rd and 1 screen there to, I believe it was Egbuka, that resulted in a TFL, Ohio State did that because they can't power run up the middle. So that offense is still very limited. I think that game showed what Ohio State's passing offense can be at its peak, which is incredible, and only Oregon can compare to that, or maybe Texas when they're on. But even then, Ewers has only been on for one game of the year against a Michigan team with no offense, so that's more speculative than anything else. I don't have evidence to really back that up. It's just kind of a theory that I've had since the preseason. But there's also the fact that I think Tennessee was overrated by analysts and by many media people on defense. I've gotten things wrong this year. One thing I have not been wrong on is ever since Tennessee lost to Arkansas, I have been out on them. Well, actually, I picked them to beat Georgia, which was, I probably shouldn't have even mentioned that here because we're talking about a different game. But even then, that was more so because I was out on Georgia rather than me being in favor of Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee is a national championship contender team. We clearly saw that. And their defensive line does not have the depth that a lot of Big Ten or other schools have on the D-line. Speaking of defense, these defenses are both great. But Ohio State's is elite, and Oregon's just straight up is not elite. That's why on the ground, for example, they allow opponents to average 4.1 yards per carry, which is 54th. And Oregon allows opponents to average 4.7 yards per play, which is 14th. Ohio State's first in opponent yards per play. Opponents only average 3.9 yards per play on them. Ohio State's also first in opponent yards per game, in opponent second half points per game, in opponent third quarter points per game. They are first in opponent red zone scoring percentage, only allowing opponents to score 59.38% of the time in the red zone. They are first in opponent offensive touchdowns per game, first in opponent points per game, allowing only 11.4, while Oregon allows 18.9, and Ohio State only allows 0.182 points per play. Oregon allows 0.275 points per play. I think that the Buckeyes are better at D-end and safety. I think that Mateo Uyunglele and Jordan Burch are really good. In fact, both of them might be better than JT Tuimoloau. But I think Jack Sawyer is better than both of them. And I think that Ohio State has better depth there. And Sawyer is turning into a non-negotiable as the season goes on, which good for him. He's been at Ohio State for 4 years now. Many, including myself, have criticized his play in the past, or rather his development. It's nice to see him really mold into an X-factor player that you have to deal with. So I pick Ohio State at D-end. Obviously, I pick them at safety. Caleb Downs is one of the best safeties in the country. Same with Lathan Ransom. And Jordan Hancock is an elite nickelback. So I love Ohio State's safety room. I mean, I think they right there are the silver bullets. The silver bullets is a term used to describe Ohio State's defense. It's their nickname. I think more accurately, that should be especially applied to their safeties, who literally have the speed of a bullet. Always flying around, always hitting you hard, making you think twice, making you question your confidence. They have elite safeties. Oregon safeties and DNs, by the way, are still great. They're just not at Ohio State's level. You look at D tackle and linebacker, though. Look, I think Cody Simon is amazing. I think that Sonny Styles is growing into the role, and he's good. But Bryce Betcher has been awesome, and Jeffrey Boss is good. If I had to go one way at linebacker, I personally would go to Ohio State. For D tackle, it's the opposite. I like Derek Harmon and Jamari Caldwell just a little bit more than Tyleik Williams and Ty Hamilton. Just a little bit more. I still believe, I don't know if this is true, Derek Harmon may be the best D tackle in terms of NFL projected draft spots out of the four. But at one point, Tyleik Williams was. He's awesome. Ty Hamilton's good. I just think that Derek Harmon is a different caliber of player. Jamari Caldwell is good as well. And Oregon does have depth behind, like Ohio State does at D tackle. So I'd slightly lean Oregon there. And at corner, Oregon has Jabbar Muhammad and Nico Reed, who I think this season have been definitively better than Denzel Burke and also Davison Igbinosun. Moving on now, I think that Oregon has the line of scrimmage advantage. Their defensive line's about the same as OSU's. I'd say OSU's is better, actually, by a slight bit, but Oregon has the much better offensive line. Special teams, I'd go with Oregon. Ohio State, by way of recruiting rankings, has the higher blue chip ratio, so the better recruited roster. I think when you factor in development and the eye test, I think Oregon has the better roster, though, right now. In terms of power ratings, what the power ratings say for this matchup, I think that Ohio State right now should actually be an underdog by what my power ratings are say. S&P Plus has Oregon winning this game by 2.1 points. I just gave Oregon 3 points there because The Rose Bowl's in their time zone. Ohio State has to travel a lot longer of a distance to the Rose Bowl than Oregon does. FPI says, factoring in the travel, the time travel, that they should win by 1.5 points. My potential power index is ridiculously high at Oregon. Oregon is more than a field goal better than everyone else. Ohio State's number 2, though. And then factoring in the travel on top of that, Oregon is, I think this is a bit too large of a number here, but I also understand it because, think about it this way, 9.2 points can be, Ohio State has the ball with 30 seconds left in the fourth quarter, and let's say they're pinned at their 5, and Oregon's only ahead by 7, and then they sack Will Howard for a safety. That's a 9-point win. And the game was always close until maybe the very, very end when maybe Oregon won, just as an example. So I understand it to a certain degree, and my power rating system tries to guess. I try to make it so that it can guess scores accurately, and 9 points can just be literally 2 plays or maybe 3 plays. So it's not saying Oregon should win in a blowout here, but it is saying my potential power index that Oregon's the better team on neutral field. And while they don't have home field advantage, Ohio State has to travel more, and they also played the week prior to this game. Oregon has had a longer time to rest and prepare than Ohio State has, and Ohio State's also had to physically battle Tennessee for 4 quarters while Oregon again is resting. In terms of dominance, Ohio State has a points per play margin of 0.386, which means for every one of their plays compared to every one of their opponent's plays, on average, they score 0.386 more points per single play, which is insane. They're one of the most dominant teams in all of college football right now, and they have an expected points added margin of 0.281. You look at Oregon, they have a points per play margin of 0.272, not as dominant as Ohio State, but still fairly dominant, and their expected points added margin is 0.227. Well, these teams move the ball very well. They do a wonderful job scoring points, and they do a great job, especially Ohio State, at limiting their opponent's scoring opportunities, at preventing them from scoring, even if they somehow drive down the field, and also at just straight up preventing their opponents from driving down the field in the first place. These teams each snowball their opponents into submission. They've played relatively tough schedules. Ohio State, the 20th toughest schedule. Oregon, the 37th toughest schedule. Ohio State's ranked 2nd in FPI, 2nd in game control. Oregon is 6th in FPI and 4th in game control. When I talk about coaching here, I believe Ohio State with Jim Knowles has the much better defensive staff than Oregon does with Tosh Lupoy and his assistant coaches. Head coach is a push. If I had to lean one way right now, I would say Dan Lanning, if I got to be honest, but it's a push. Ryan Day could easily be the better head coach. I think Ryan Day is still a great near-elite coach in college football. Could be elite. I still have my doubts after that Michigan game. The Tennessee game, look, I predicted Tennessee to win not to win. That's a gaffe by me. I predicted Tennessee to lose by 17 points. I was on the side that Ohio State was the definitively better team and that they actually had a greater matchup in some instances in the trenches than even Tennessee did. And then on top of that, they were going to win the battle through the air because they had the better QB, better wide receivers, better secondary outside of corner, and it didn't even look that way on Saturday where Ohio State had the better corners in that game. So the Tennessee game impressed a lot of people, swung a lot of people's opinions. It impressed me. I didn't think Ohio State would do that well, but it didn't impress me as much as it did others because I thought that Ohio State was going to wear down Tennessee and eventually break them. I just didn't think it would happen out of the gate. I thought it would happen after 3 quarters or maybe 2. So I'm saying that to say that my opinion on Day is still closer to what it was after the Michigan game than before the Michigan game, where I was considering listing him as the nation's #1 head coach, and I thought he had his most impressive coaching job of his career. But him and Dan Lanning are pretty close. I would say Oregon has the offensive staff advantage. I think Will Stein and his assistant coaches are much better than Chip Kelly and some of Ohio State's assistant coaches, though, of course, Brian Hartline is the GOAT wide receivers coach. And then I would also favor Oregon with strength and conditioning. This has been an area with Ohio State that I've criticized for really the past, I'd say, 2 years, I would say. Maybe longer than that, but I'd say really the past 2 years. the trenches for Ohio State are the most underdeveloped position groups on the roster. Even when you factor in injuries, that still remains to be the case. And I think Oregon has done a better job under Lanning developing in areas that hugely rely on strength compared to Ohio State. Now, Ohio State's strength and conditioning program is still good. It's still great. My point is you expect to be elite in all areas at Ohio State, and they have not been elite in strength and conditioning and straight-up power situations. Oregon has, meanwhile. So you can probably tell where I'm going just by how I was talking about these teams and what my model picked. Ohio State's here by 2.5 points, but I'm on the other side of this. I think that Oregon's going to win. And I think that people are talking about how Oregon's been screwed due to the playoff format. And to a certain degree, I get it. To a certain degree, it may even be true. But they're going to have to play a team of OSU's caliber at some point. So why not play them now? And the other thing people aren't talking about is, yeah, Oregon may not get the gift, quote unquote, because you never know what'll happen, that Texas and Penn State did. However, they have a week to rest. And even though Ohio State didn't suffer many injuries, no injuries, in fact, I tweeted and people misunderstood it when I said that, Notre Dame and Ohio State, they had to show some of their scheme. Their players had to place. They got tired. They didn't get to watch film on Oregon because they're preparing for each other, while Oregon gets to watch film on them. And at the end of the day, they, and by they, I mostly meant Notre Dame, suffered injuries. And people were saying, what do you mean? Ohio State didn't suffer any injuries. I'm like, I know. That's why I put Notre Dame in parentheses. The point is, Ohio State still played Tennessee. Their muscles are still sore. They had to fight. They had to work. They had to sweat. Oregon is doing that in practice. They're not going to be as tired. They're probably going to be more rested. They had a longer time to prepare. And that, combined with the fact that I think they have the better staff, means they'll take a greater advantage of a period of rest than, let's say, Ohio State will. So I think all of that, including the time travel and the fact that Oregon's better in the trenches, and they're really not that much worse through the air. Their secondary at points this year was statistically better than Ohio State's was. And I don't think that Oregon is worse in a lot of areas compared to OSU. And they are in some areas, but Oregon is the better trench play. They have the better quarterback. They are playing in an environment that they are more used to, slightly. And I think that all those things combined means that Oregon wins. Not by my model's 9.2 points. I might be that aggressive depending on the film I watch or other things that I look into to prep for my deep dive. But right now I'm just going to go with Oregon 31-24, I think is the score of the Rose Bowl. So go Ducks, go Buckeyes. I hope this Rose Bowl is a fantastic game. I think it's going to be a magical game, a magical event, and I cannot wait to do play-by-play and color commentary for this one. So let's have a good New Year's Day and a fantastic Rose Bowl. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so that way you can get notified when new content from College Football with Sam drops. I appreciate you very much, and also share the video around to others who enjoy the sport of college football and love it as I do and as you do, and comment your thoughts down below so that we can have a conversation, because I want to know what you are thinking. And join our Discord server where we talk college football 24/7 via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Thank you to my Heisman Patreon members, Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Kylo OH. Thank you to my All-American Patreon members, Chris Lane, Ismar, and Tyler Nye. And thank you to my All-Conference members, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus. Make sure to check out my merchandise store and or Patreon page, or super chat down in the comment section below to support the channel. The Patreon page and merchandise store links are in the description or down below in the pinned comment. I hope you have a wonderful day. It is December, so Merry Christmas and also Happy New Year. I will see you guys soon.